But one could argue he has a mandate to diss progressives.
NBC's Chuck Todd continues to be one of the best examples of how mainstream political commentary works against the best interests of the poor and the middle class. Now, because Chuck Todd is a host on Meet the Press, a lot of people won't question or recognize what he is doing here. Because, again, it is about the framing of the question, not how somebody answers the question. The framing is everything because it limits the possibilities for how that question is answered. So here is an example of that from this weekend's Meet the Press.
It does seem as if Joe Biden's got an interesting challenge here. I think he does owe some representation, particularly to the African-American community. I mean, he said it himself. They had his back, so he's got to have theirs. But one could argue he has a mandate to diss progressives. Now, he probably can't get caught saying it that way, but they were decidedly not only not with him, they tried to defeat him.
Well, yes, and I think the message from Biden camp on all of this, whether it's progressives or concern from other minority groups, is we hear you, but we've got this. And he does feel like he has a mandate, and he's also facing the reality that President Trump did not face, which is that when he governs, he is likely to continue to face challenges from his own party. But he's aware of that, and he has said repeatedly, look, I didn't pull the wool over anybody's eyes during this election. I'm a moderate. That's who I am. That's my background, and that's how I'm going to govern.
Danny Pletko, a Democrat's moderate is still a conservative's liberal. And this cabinet that Joe Biden is putting together, though, it looks more center-left than it does progressive-left.
Well, it does in some cases. And, you know, Politico reported last week that national security progressives and far-left activist groups like Win Without War and Code Pink are now trying to coordinate their response to these appointments. They're trying to stop, for example, Michelle Flournoy, who's one of Biden's candidates to head the Department of Defense. They don't like her because she's worked with defense contractors. Right. And I think that's what we're going to see, is that there is going to be pushback. Let's remember, all of these political parties, this happened with Donald Trump as well. Yeah. Once they lose that outside bogeyman, they become circular firing squads, and it becomes very hard to get stuff done.
All right. Before I get to anything specific here, just recognize how they are so focused on the political drama. How these different factions are interacting, how, you know, there's these disputes within the party, as opposed to looking at what people need. What politics should be about, who the lawmakers should be serving. I'll get to more of that in a minute. But quote here from Chuck Todd, a Democrat's moderate is still a conservative's liberal. This doesn't mean anything. What is that politician serving? Moderate Democrats, moderate Republicans, they all serve the same interests. The wealthy, private interests, multinational corporations. They're not serving the average individual. They're not serving the poor and the middle class. Again, the media's job is supposed to be representing the average person, being a voice for people that have no voice. But instead, they become a mouthpiece for those already with power, already with wealth. Also, Chuck Todd quote here, one could argue, he, speaking of Joe Biden, has a mandate to diss progressives. Now, before I even get to how absurd this is, he says this after discussing how Joe Biden should represent, black voters in the administration. But then he acts like progressives are separate from the black community, without acknowledging that there are black progressives. You can be both. Many of the people they hold up, someone like MLK, is a democratic socialist, but they will never discuss him in that way. Because again, there is a certain agenda to push here. Now, on the idea that he has a mandate to diss progressives, this is so crazy that even longtime Clinton ally Paul Begala praised Bernie Sanders and AOC for the work that they did for Joe Biden prior to the election.
As someone from the Clinton wing of the party, not the AOC Bernie wing of the party, I have been really impressed at how hard Bernie, AOC, and the left have worked to bring people into this process and have them vote for Joe Biden, probably their fourth or fifth choice. 2016, one of the reasons Hillary lost is too many on the left took a walk. They either stayed home or they voted for third and fourth party candidates. I don't see that now. And I think people like me owe it to honesty and integrity to thank AOC and to thank Bernie and the folks who in the primaries we were on the opposite side of for just what terrific team players they're being in this election.
Even Paul Begala acknowledged this. Now, I can spend this entire time discussing how clearly Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Bernie Sanders did more for Joe Biden than any other lawmaker, how you saw Democratic registration surge during the defund the police protests after George Floyd. But this is not about political factions. It's about helping people. This panel on Meet the Press, instead of discussing what Joe Biden should be doing to meet the moment, how he could be helping people, they're focusing on political drama. Chuck Todd should be discussing the eviction crisis, 30 to 40 million losing their homes. What is Joe Biden going to do about that? Should be discussing the tens of millions losing their health care because health care in America is tied to your employer. What's Joe Biden going to do about that? He could be discussing the student loan debt crisis, how that is holding people down from starting their lives. What is Joe Biden going to do about that? Or discussing the climate crisis currently ravaging humanity. But no, instead, Joe Biden has a mandate to diss progressives. Yes, after winning the election, what we're going to focus on now is Joe Biden settling scores within the Democratic Party as opposed to looking at the pandemic, looking at the eviction crisis, looking at the healthcare crisis, looking at the climate crisis, and asking what is Joe Biden going to do about that? Using our power in the media to push the powerful, to put truth to power. Ask people in power with wealth, with money, with power, with political power, what are you going to do to help people? But no. It's all about drama. It's all about the games. To Chuck Todd, politics is it's a sport. You got one team, Democratic Party, you got the other team, the GOP, and there's these fights, this drama within each party. There's these cliques going on, and that's what we're going to focus on as opposed to actually understanding what politics is about, what lawmakers should be doing, and that is helping people.